Hello, my name is Mike McCowan. I am with Meek & Associates, and this is my pre-prepared talk track around custom geomapping for your consideration and review. I appreciate any and all feedback. So now that we've seen some of the capabilities that Tableau has regarding bar charts, and again, there are more than what is just in the books, but we give you the baseline with the bullet graphs and the bar and bar. If there are no questions about that, we are going to be moving on here. All right, great. We're going to be taking a pretty heavy pivot here, and we're going to be talking about maps. Now I know those of you that have been through Desktop 1, you guys already remember maps, and just to get our memories jived, since it is a one of the earlier sections of Desktop 1, and we're already in Desktop 2, what do we remember from mapping in Desktop 1? There are no wrong answers here. Again, we're just trying to get our heads back into that geographic state of mind. Okay, that's a good one. They're easy to create. Just simply double-clicking a geocoded field. Perfect. What else do we remember? Yeah, we can create our own custom areas. So if we had 4 or 5 sales teams and they each were assigned different areas in the city, we could custom make those based on spatial files, and then we could compare how our sales teams were doing visually. Perfect, that's a great one. Let's take one more here before we move on. Okay, that's a good one too. We have many best practices that we have to be taking care of, or that we have to keep in mind when we're doing mapping, such as coastlines, state names, zip codes, a whole litany of options that we can have to make our map looking picture perfect. So now that we're in Desktop 2, obviously we're going to be going a little bit more advanced into the mapping, and we're actually going to be doing custom background mapping. So any of you guys that thought, oh, my data doesn't involve geocoding, I'm never going to use mapping, I'm here to prove you specifically wrong, because Tableau has some pretty incredible mapping capabilities, and I'm going to paint a picture for you here so that we can kind of grasp the concept before we ever really try it in Tableau. Again, getting a strong baseline for what Tableau is doing is necessary before we actually jump in Tableau. So imagine for a second that you are the manager of a shipping yard. Might sound strange, but a manager of a shipping yard. And the owner of the shipping yard has tasked you with increasing efficiency. So he is not happy with how long it takes a boat to come into harbor, get loaded, and then leave. So he wants you to improve the load and unload efficiency that goes into maintaining the stockyard. This is what he tells you to do. You, being a Tableau analyst, figured that you will use Tableau. And let me paint this picture. Alright, so what we have here is just a basic shipping yard. Try and use your imagination a little bit. We have the shipping containers stored right here. We have the waterway where the boat is loaded right here. Probably some cranes right along this side that take the shipping containers and put them onto the boat over there. So, just thinking intuitively, we would like our faster moving items over here on the left-hand side where there's easier access that they can get to the boats. And then maybe our long-term storage items or items that are not bought as much over here on the right-hand side. So right off the bat, I'm going to draw a dotted line. And label those for easy access and long-term storage over here. So all of these plot points right here are essentially just a graph or a scatter plot if you want to think about it that way. So let's assume that each one of these plot points holds one shipping container. And again, this is a more micro example. This could be extrapolated out to thousands and thousands of points, because I'm sure many of you guys may know that shipping yards can be quite massive in size. So taking you back to high school math here real quick, what would we call this point right here? So that'd be 1, 2, 1, 2. This is more like right here, but that would be 2, 2. So let's go ahead and plot that. promise I won't give you too many of these, but let's do 2 more. What would we call this point right here? So we got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That'd be 3, 3, another easy one. And last but not least, what would we call this point right here? Let's do one that's not a double number. Yeah, it'd be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Once we get 100% of these points plotted, we can go ahead and load this into Tableau and treat it as a data set. Then we could use, potentially, depending on how your data is structured, another data set to blend in here so that we could get all of our plot points, and then take another data set to reference how often items are pulled from those plot points, and potentially size this dot by that, giving us a quick visual reference for which items move the quickest. So just so we're all on the same page here, if this was a huge dot right here, we got a big dot, that means that item is referenced, or that item is pulled from quite often. If we have a small dot right here, that means that dot is not pulled from quite frequently. So we could potentially move all these shipping containers over into our long-term storage so that we can use this priority shipping area to load these boats much, much faster. So this is our basic concept. As I'm sure you can understand, it can be quite time-consuming depending on how big or how many plots you want to point. But it is something that you'll be able to leverage and take advantage of for a very, very long time to come. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like in Tableau. Pivot my camera here real quick. And again, I would invite you guys to keep your hands off your keyboards for this specific one. I'm going to go ahead and have a seat for this one, although ordinarily I wouldn't, just so that we're all working together at the same height here. So I have a small example prep. It's going to look remarkably similar to what we have up there. And you see I have a blank Tableau window open. So the first thing we need to do is get some data. Let's start from absolute square one. Connect to an Excel file. And I have a data set called shipping containers that I will load in here, right here. You can see we just have some simple plot points down here. We have a container column, an X location column, and a Y location column. So this is the first thing you'll want to take note of, because Tableau is smart enough to know that X location and Y location are going to be plotted points on a map, and it will treat them accordingly. So let's go ahead and go to sheet 1. So ideally, you would have an aerial view of your shipping containers, because if you took it not in an aerial view, obviously those plot points would be a little bit skewed. Aerial would be your best perspective for taking that picture. And I have a pre-prepared picture, but you could take this picture, you could get one off the internet, you could do any number of things as long as you have the picture in your possession. So I'm going to go up here to my map menu, and I'm going to select background images. This brings up a dialog box where I'm going to add an image. Browse to it, and again, as I said, I had a pre-prepared image that I'm sending you guys, or that I'm using here today, right here. It's just an image of my very basic, we'll call it a stockyard, even though really it's just 12 containers. Now down here, I have 2 fields, one called X location, one called X field, one called Y field. You want to make sure that these match up correctly with your columns in here. You see that right here, it defaulted to my Y location, and if you look above that, it says X field. Let's go ahead and tell it to use X. From here, you have to dictate the size of these, the size of the field that you would like. So if you had thousands of plot points, this would be several thousand large. For our very simple example, we're going to just be entering in 6. And I will click apply. Down here, there is a washout slider that you can feel free to take advantage of, so you can overlay some images or have your map washed out a little bit. and I'll go ahead and select apply. All right, and it gives me a new item in this list right here. We're not going to worry about this not valid here. We're going to press OK, and we're going to start building our scatter plot. So I'm going to take X location up, and I'm going to drop it here. I'm selecting average, and just bear with me here. I'm going to go back to my whiteboard, and I'm going to explain why. All right, so that doesn't quite look right, but let's just go back to the whiteboard. So as you can see here, we have 3 different points, 2, 2, 3, 3, and 2, 1. What do you think is going to happen if Tableau uses its favorite aggregation on that scatter plot? It's going to sum these. That's not what we want in this particular example. So what I did is I just selected the average of the X and Y location, and this should work out nicely for me. So you see that my sizing is a little bit off, and this is due to the average that I'm using right here. It's averaging all my plots, and then it's putting the average in each of the axes. But we can go ahead and right-click, edit axis, and we can dictate where we want it to start. So I'm going to do 0 and 6. If you'll remember in the previous section, hang tight real quick. As you can remember up here in my background images section, this is where I dictated that I wanted 6 points, and therefore 6 for each of my axes is going to work quite nicely. Now I can put my container Now I can put my container into my detail, and it is going to plot the points. Let me make this a circle mark type, and let me increase the size so you can see it a little bit better. There we go, that's a little bit better. You can see that I have a dot on my map that's going to correspond with the plot points that I have in my underlying data source back here. So let's just go ahead and add another one just to see what it looks like. I'm going to name this point custom so we know what we're looking for. And let's put it at 5, 5 and just make it nice and prominent and easy to display. I'm going to save this data source. And then I'm going to reload it. Sorry if I'm moving a little fast here. We will be doing this all together. You can see my new point right down here, custom 5 and 5. Let's go to my sheet, map, background images. We're going to browse to our image. Remember, we have to be sure that X field is X location, Y field is Y location. We're going to set my upper boundary to 6 again. And we're going to select the average of the locations once again. So if I'm moving a little too fast here, these are the same steps as we did previously. And I'm happy to go over it again should anybody miss it. Fixing my axes so that it's not the average of my locations, but my inputted point count. I'll put my containers onto detail. You can see these little circles, and I'll once again go to circle mark type. Excuse me. And increase the size a little bit just so you guys can see it. And there you can see, right here, we have our 5 point custom on there. So since we don't have time to do the blend ourselves, I do have another prepared example to show you real quick before I set you guys off to do it on your own. So there's public data that you can get out on the internet that tells you the probability of landing on each of the Monopoly board spaces. And I have that built right here. So if I change this to a circle mark type again, increase the size a little bit, you see that I have a dot on every single spot, but they're all the same size. So I don't want you to think I'm working some voodoo magic. This probability is gotten just off the internet. And so I'm going to put that probability onto size, and now you can see I have a different probability for each one of my spots based on the percentage that that spot will land you in jail. So again, a helpful analysis that we can do relatively simple using custom geocode locations within Tableau. Now, last thing before I set you guys loose on your own, you'll notice these 2 points right here. What do you suspect is going on with those 2 points right there? I'll give you a hint and hover over them. This one, it says chance. This one says community chest. So if you're familiar with Monopoly, you'll know that there are 2 chances and 2 community chests. And by taking the average of their locations, we are now averaging between my chance location here and chance location here. So being careful as you're making these points, say, for example, putting chance 1 or chance 2 or dictating which specific chance it is can be hugely helpful. All right, there we go. There's a quick look at what Tableau is capable of in regards to custom background images. If there are no questions, are we sure? This can be a little bit confusing. All right, perfect. So if you guys could please turn to page 105 and complete the exercise for yourself. I'll be walking around behind you guys just to make sure you're on the right track.